Good evening, and in this video I'm going to go over something that I find pretty interesting, and that is the early days of humanity. It's not a history lesson, so don't worry. It's just some stuff that I find fascinating about the subject. There will be a few different topics that I cover to do with early humans, so let's relax, unwind, and explore the early days of humanity, long before the world as we know it took shape, where the people lived simple yet remarkable lives. Their days were spent in small groups, relying on one another for survival, warmth, and connection. In the video, we will take a look at how they found food, the way they communicated, and the important role that fire and social bonds played in their everyday lives. As we discover these ancient times, allow yourself to relax and drift off into the quiet rhythm of our shared history. There really is no need to remember any details or follow closely. There won't be a test, I promise. Just let the story of humanity's beginnings help you unwind and find rest. So, before we cover any other topics, we need to pay homage to the Neanderthals. So imagine a time, tens of thousands of years ago, when ancient humans were not alone in the world. In the cold landscapes of Europe and parts of Asia, there lived another kind of human, strong, resilient, and intelligent. These were the Neanderthals. The Neanderthals were not so different from us. They hunted, they made tools, and they lived in groups, much like the early Homo sapiens, our own ancestors. For many thousands of years, the two species existed side by side. Yet today, only one remains. So what happened to the Neanderthals? How did they disappear from the world? There are several theories, but no one single answer. One idea is that climate change played a major role. Neanderthals lived through periods of intense cold during the Ice Age, and they were well adapted to these harsh conditions. But over time, the Earth's climate changed, becoming warmer and less predictable. As the landscape shifted, the plants and animals that they depended on may have become harder to find. Hunting, which had sustained them for generations, may have become increasingly difficult. But climate change wasn't the only challenge that they faced. Around the same time, another group of humans, Homo sapiens, began to spread into the regions where the Neanderthals lived. Our ancestors brought competition, competing for the same food sources, the same land, and perhaps even the same shelters. It's possible that Homo sapiens had certain advantages. They may have had more advanced tools, better weapons for hunting, or perhaps more efficient ways of making clothing and shelters. Some researchers also believe that Homo sapiens were better at communicating, possibly using complex language to share ideas, plan hunts, and teach one another. This ability to cooperate and to adapt may have given modern humans an edge in the struggle to survive. However, it's also possible that Neanderthals didn't disappear entirely, at least not in the way we usually think of extinction. There is evidence that Neanderthals and Homo sapiens interbred. This means that, instead of being wiped out, Neanderthals may have gradually blended with the growing Homo sapien population. Today, many people carry traces of Neanderthal DNA, suggesting that the two species didn't remain separate, but instead merged over time. Still, some scientists think that the extinction of the Neanderthals was, in part, a matter of survival of the fittest. Modern humans may have simply been better at adapting to changing environments. They travelled further, explored new territories, and were able to thrive in the more diverse climates. Meanwhile, the Neanderthals they may have been more tied to the areas they were familiar with, making it harder for them to cope with changes in the environment and the growing competition. It's important to remember that the disappearance of the Neanderthals wasn't something that happened overnight. It likely took thousands of years, a slow, gradual process where the challenges of climate, competition, and possibly even disease all played a part. While the exact reasons may never be fully known, we can see how many factors likely came together, shaping the fate of the Neanderthals. What we do know is that they left their mark on history. Their tools, their remains, and even their genes all live on as part of the story of humanity. So although the Neanderthals are no longer here, their legacy endures in many ways. Their story reminds us of the long journey our species has taken and how closely connected we are to those who came before us. As we look back on their time on Earth, we can appreciate the mystery of their disappearance, while acknowledging the role that they played in shaping the world as we live in it today. Long before humans built cities or settled into farming, they lived as hunter-gatherers, always on the move, following the rhythms of nature. Life back then was simple, but every day was a balance between surviving and thriving. In those early days, people lived in small groups. These groups were like families, closely connected, working together to find food, protect one another, and build a sense of community. They moved from place to place, following the seasons, looking for areas rich with plants, animals, and fresh water. These groups didn't have homes like we think of today. Instead, they used what nature provided. Shelters made from branches, caves, or even temporary huts they could set up and take down as they moved. They didn't stay in one place for too long because they needed to follow their food sources. In this way of life, cooperation was everything. Survival wasn't about being strong alone. It was about working together. Each person in the group had a role, and all of those roles were important. Typically, the men of the group would focus on hunting. They tracked wild animals and with the help of tools like spears and traps, hunted for the meat that would feed their families. Hunting was difficult and dangerous. They often had to chase animals for long distances or come up with clever ways to outsmart prey that was much faster and stronger than they were. But they didn't do it alone. Hunting in teams allowed them to work together, using their intelligence to bring down large animals that a single person could never catch on their own. While the men hunted, the women often gathered plants, berries, nuts, and roots. They knew the land well, and they understood which plants were safe to eat and which ones to avoid. Gathering was just as important as hunting because it meant the group always had a steady supply of food, even when the hunting wasn't as successful. Children were an important part of these groups too. Even from a young age, they learned by watching the adults around them. They might help gather small plants or carry supplies, learning the skills that they would need as they grew older. Children learned how to track animals, how to make tools, and how to find food in nature, all by observing and imitating the adults. But it wasn't just about who hunted and who gathered. The strength of these early human groups came from sharing everything they found. After a successful hunt, the meat was shared among everybody. No one kept food for themselves. It was this sense of togetherness and mutual support that allowed these groups to survive, even in the harshest environments. If one person found food, it meant the whole group could eat. If someone was hurt or sick, the group took care of them. Nobody was left to fend for themselves. The bonds between these people in these groups were as important as the food they found. These close relationships helped them get through tough times, stay safe from predators, and even raise the next generation of hunters and gatherers. Tools were another key part of survival. Early humans were skilled at creating tools from stone, wood, and bone. These tools made hunting easier and allowed them to gather food more efficiently. Spears, knives, and traps helped them catch animals, while digging sticks and baskets made gathering plants easier. These tools weren't just practical, they were passed down from generation to generation, along with knowledge of how to use them. Life as a hunter-gatherer wasn't easy, but early humans adapted to their world by learning to work together, share resources, and make the most of the land around them. They lived in harmony with nature, taking only what was needed, and always moving to new places when resources became scarce. In this way, humans didn't just survive, they built tight-knit communities, developed skills, and passed down knowledge from one generation to the next. It was this combination of cooperation, intelligence, and adaptability that allowed early humans to thrive in a world that was often unpredictable and challenging. And in those quiet moments, after a long day of hunting, gathering, and sharing, they likely gathered around a fire, not just for warmth, but for connection, telling stories, sharing experiences, and strengthening the bonds that made them more than just survivors. It made them human. In the early days of humanity, what people ate wasn't about choice or preference. It was about survival. Early humans ate whatever they could find or catch, relying on the land to provide the food that would keep them alive. Their diet was a mix of both plants and animals, which helped give them the nutrients they needed to stay healthy and strong. Hunting provided meat, rich in protein and fat, which gave them the energy needed to endure the challenges of their environment. They hunted animals like deer, rabbits, or even larger prey when they had the tools and the skills to do so. But meat wasn't always easy to come by. When hunting didn't go as planned, or when animals were scarce, they turned to the plants around them. Early humans gathered fruits, berries, nuts, roots, and leaves, whatever was in season or growing nearby. Plants gave them important vitamins and fiber that was balancing out their diets. This balance between meat and plants was key. The animal protein helped their bodies grow stronger, while the plants provided the variety of nutrients they couldn't get from meat alone. It wasn't about eating big meals or satisfying cravings. It was about getting enough energy to survive another day. Early humans also had to adapt to the changing seasons. During the warmer months, when plants were plentiful and when animals roamed in larger numbers, they could find food more easily. But in the colder seasons, when the landscape became barren, it was much harder to find anything to eat. In these tougher times, they had to get creative. They learned to store food when they could, perhaps drying meat or gathering and storing nuts to eat during the leaner months. Some groups followed migrating animals, always moving to where the food was. Others learned to adapt by finding new sources of food, like foraging for roots hidden underground, or fishing in rivers and lakes when other options ran out. Every season brought new challenges, and early humans had to stay flexible, always ready to change their habits depending on what the environment provided. Their relationship with the land and the food it provided shaped their entire way of life. Hunting and gathering weren't just survival tactics. They were a way of understanding and connecting with the world around them. They learned which plants were safe to eat, how to track animals, and how to use every part of the animals they caught, wasting nothing. In this constant search for food, early humans developed not just the skills to survive, but the ability to adapt to their surroundings, and that adaptability became one of their greatest strengths. At some point in our distant past, early humans discovered something that would change their world forever. Fire. It wasn't just something that happened in nature anymore. They learned how to control it, how to make it, and most importantly, how to use it. And that simple flame became one of the greatest tools in their survival. Fire brought warmth, and that meant they could survive in the colder environments, places that they may have avoided before. With fire, they no longer had to rely on the warmth of the sun or the shelter of caves. They could light their fires at night, keeping the chill of the darkness at bay. But fire wasn't just about warmth. It became a shield, protecting them from predators. In the past, the night had been a dangerous time. Large animals with better night vision and sharper senses could easily sneak up on a sleeping group. But with fire, humans had something that scared off these animals. A single campfire was enough to keep predators like wolves or big cats at a distance, letting people rest more easily, knowing they were safer. Then there was the way fire changed their food. Before fire, humans ate whatever they could find, raw. But raw meat and plants could be tough to chew, hard to digest, and sometimes even dangerous. Fire transformed that. By cooking their food, early humans made it easier to eat and safer as well. Cooking broke down the tough fibers in the meat and plants, making the nutrients more available to the body. This gave them more energy from the same amount of food, and over time, better nutrition likely helped their brains grow stronger. Cooking food with fire was also a way to make use of things they couldn't before. Some plants became edible only after cooking, and even meat from animals that had been dead for a while could be safely eaten if it was cooked. Fire unlocked new possibilities in their diet, giving them more choices, especially when fresh food wasn't always as easy to come by. But fire did more than just change how they survived. It changed how they connected with each other. Imagine a small group of early humans sitting around a campfire at the end of a long day. The fire crackles softly, its warmth spreading through the group. It would have been in these moments, gathered around the fire, that people shared stories, ideas, and experiences. It's likely that fire became a social tool, drawing people closer together. With fire, they could sit and talk long after the sun had gone down, their faces lit by the soft glow of the flames. They may have passed down important lessons, taught each other new skills, or just enjoyed the comfort of being together. Fire made it possible to create a sense of community, a time and a place where people could relax, communicate, and strengthen the bonds that held their group together. These moments around the fire were probably the beginnings of something much bigger. Traditions, rituals, and the sharing of knowledge from one generation to the next. As they learned to control fire, humans also learned more about the world around them. They began to use fire in other ways too. Maybe to clear land for hunting, or to help craft tools by heating and shaping materials. Fire became a tool for survival, but it also became a part of their everyday life, changing how they saw the world and how they lived in it. In many ways, fire wasn't just about survival. It brought with it a new way of living, allowing humans to explore colder regions, hunt more effectively, and perhaps, most importantly, come together in ways that they hadn't before. That small, flickering flame was more than just a source of warmth and light. It was the beginning of something much larger, something that humans would carry forward for generations to come. In the early days of humanity, communication was simple. People relied on gestures, facial expressions, and basic sounds to share important information. A raised hand might signal danger, or a grunt could point others towards food. These early forms of communication were enough to help them survive. As humans lived in small groups, Working together became essential for their survival. Simple gestures and sounds helped them coordinate their actions, whether it was planning a hunt, alerting others to nearby predators, or sharing the location of food and water. Being able to communicate allowed them to work more effectively as a team, which gave them a key advantage in the wild. Over time, this need for communication grew. Early humans began to develop more complex ways of expressing themselves. Specific sounds likely became linked to certain objects or actions, and these sounds evolved into basic forms of speech. This development helped them share more than just immediate concerns. Now they could describe past events, warn of future dangers, and pass on knowledge. With the language, humans could share crucial survival skills with others in their group. They taught their children how to hunt, gather, and navigate their environment. They also shared strategies for finding food and water, ensuring that knowledge wasn't lost, but passed down from one generation to the next. Beyond survival, language brought early humans closer together. It helped them bond, share stories, and express their thoughts and feelings. Sitting around the fire, they could reflect on their day, plan for tomorrow, or teach the younger members of their group what they had learned. Language allowed them to form deeper connections, which strengthened their social bonds. Over the generations, what began as simple sounds evolved into a vital tool that shaped human life. Language didn't just help early humans survive, it became the foundation of their ability to work together, adapt, and thrive in a never-changing world. In the quiet, dark corners of caves, early humans left behind some of the first evidence of their creativity. Drawings etched or painted onto the walls. These images, created with charcoal, blood, and natural pigments from plants and minerals, offer a glimpse into their world. The figures and symbols found in cave art are often simple but powerful. Animals, people, and shapes that seem to tell a story. But the truth is, we don't know exactly why early humans made these drawings. Were they trying to communicate with each other, or perhaps something greater? Maybe these images represented their hopes, fears, or experiences from their day-to-day lives. Some believe cave art had a deeper, spiritual meaning. It might have been part of rituals or ceremonies, a way for early humans to connect with the animals that they hunted or the forces of nature they depended on. The images could have been meant to bring luck for hunting or protection from dangers in their environment. Others think these drawings could have been an early way of recording stories or passing down their knowledge. Perhaps they were showing future generations how to track animals or to find food. The images might have been a way to teach, using pictures when words or language were still limited. Whatever the reasons, these drawings suggest that early humans were capable of more than just survival. They were thinking beyond the immediate needs of food, water, and shelter. They were exploring their world creatively, expressing themselves in ways that went beyond the practical. These early artworks show us that humans, even in their most primitive state, had a desire to leave a mark, to express something deeper than the need to survive. Cave art is one of the earliest signs that humans were capable of imagination, of seeing the world not just as it was, but as something that they could interpret and share with others. It suggests a kind of awareness and curiosity that goes beyond simple survival instincts. We may never know exactly what these early artists were trying to say, but their work remains, a silent reminder of a time when humans first began to express themselves in ways that were uniquely their own. Amid the forests and plains, another species walked these lands, wild wolves. These wolves were powerful, intelligent hunters in their own right, but something extraordinary happened. Over time, a connection began to form between early humans and these wild creatures. At first, the wolves likely lingered at the edge of human camps, drawn by the scent of food, the warmth of a fire, or perhaps just curiosity. Maybe they ate leftover scraps or found comfort in the presence of humans, away from other predators. And for early humans, who often faced dangers in the wild, the wolves became more than just bystanders. They offered something that would become essential: a partnership. This partnership didn't happen overnight. It took generations, slowly building a sense of trust. Some wolves, perhaps the ones with calmer temperaments, became more comfortable around humans. These were the early beginnings of what would become the very first domesticated dogs. You see, the relationship worked both ways, in a kind of quiet, natural balance. The wolves gained something valuable: consistent food, warmth, and protection from other threats. And in return, they began to help the humans in ways that changed the course of history. Imagine early humans huddled by the fire with wolves nearby, alert and watchful. The wolves started to act as natural protectors, keeping watch over the campsites, warning of approaching dangers, maybe even scaring off the other predators. They would have become an extra layer of safety, a companion in the dark, cold, wild nights. But their roles didn't stop there. As time passed, these early dogs became more involved in human life. They learned to track prey alongside humans, using their keen senses to find animals that the humans alone couldn't. This helped humans hunt more efficiently, bringing down larger game and ensuring there was enough food for the survival of both the humans and the wolves. Somewhere along the way, dogs may have also helped herd animals, guiding and keeping them close to the group. This collaboration allowed early humans to thrive in ways that would have been much more difficult on their own. Together, humans and dogs learned from each other, growing, adapting, and evolving as a team. In this symbiotic relationship, both species benefited. The humans gained not just protection and hunting support, but companionship. And for the dogs, being part of a human pack meant safety, food, and shelter. This mutual bond was the foundation of what would eventually become one of the strongest relationships in nature, between humans and dogs. Over thousands of years, this bond grew stronger. The early wolves that become part of human life evolved, and their descendants became more like the dogs that we know today. Dogs were no longer just wild animals. They became part of the family. They lived alongside humans, sharing their daily lives, offering loyalty, love, and protection. This deep connection between humans and dogs is still with us today. Whether it's a loyal companion lying at our feet, or a working dog helping with important tasks, the bond remains unbroken, just as it began all of those millennia ago. And as we reflect on that journey, we can appreciate the ancient partnership that helped both species not only survive, but thrive. From the wild wolves that wandered near the firelight of early human camps, to the dogs that now live in our homes, it's a story of companionship, trust, and shared survival. As you breathe in and breathe out, you can almost imagine those ancient times. The warmth of the fire, the quiet rustle of the wild, and the loyal presence of a dog watching over the camp, side by side with humans, just as it was long ago.
Hi
hope that you've enjoyed listening to the brief coverage of ancient humanity. It's something that I find extremely interesting, and I think it just brings a little bit back to reality and just how life has come together and pieced itself together as we know it. It's quite comforting, really. And when you look up at the stars in the night sky and you can see everything that's up there, you can just sort of imagine that tens of thousands of years ago our ancestors were doing exactly the same. So yeah, hopefully you enjoyed that as much as I did. If there are any other topics that you guys would like me to cover, take a look at and possibly speak about, then just let me know in the comments and I'll see what I can do to cover those and sort of get some research and stuff together. So yeah, it's been fun, and I will see you guys next time. Enjoy your sleep.